I have a very lovely story for you today, and I want you to sit back, take a deep breath, and just let yourself feel it. Because what I'm about to share with you is not just a story. It's a mirror. It's a conversation. And it just might touch a part of you that hasn't been touched in a while. So let's begin. Pause. It started with the sound of porcelain shattering. Then came silence. In a small apartment above a shuttered hardware store in East Boston, a 7-year-old girl named Sophie stood frozen at the kitchen doorway. Her mother lay on the floor, motionless, one arm stretched across a spilled cup of chamomile tea, steam still rising from the broken mug. Her mother, Elena, had struck her head on the cabinet on the way down. A thin line of blood traced behind her ear. Gasps, Sophie dropped her stuffed koala. She stepped forward on trembling legs. Mom. No answer. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She did what her mother had always told her to do if anything ever went wrong. Call Uncle Ryan. She climbed onto the counter, grabbed her mother's phone, opened the contacts, and dialed. Her fingers were cold. She was 7 years old. She missed just one digit. A man's voice came through. Calm. Low. Steady. Hello. Sophie hesitated. I'm sorry, is this Ryan? No. I need help. My mom fell. She's bleeding. She's not waking up. Please come. On the other end of that call stood Damien Ward, barefoot, in the dark of his penthouse, the city glittering behind him through floor-to-ceiling glass. Distant, indifferent, a billionaire who had built empires and still hadn't found rest. Where are you? He asked. The little voice hesitated. I don't know the street, but we live above Jimmy's tools. There's a red door. That was enough. Damien didn't call his assistant. He didn't wait. He threw on a coat, grabbed his keys, and drove. 13 minutes later, his black SUV screeched down a frozen back street. The building was what people call historic, which really just means forgotten. A red door, barely hanging on its hinges, at the top of 3 icy concrete steps. He took them 2 at a time. The hallway smelled like dust and old radiator steam. Apartment 3B. Door cracked open just an inch. He knocked once. It swung wider. A small girl stood in the narrow gap, socks soaked through, clutching the edge of her mother's phone like it was her last anchor to the world. You came, she said. I did. Inside, the apartment was neat, worn, but cared for. A pile of laundry in the corner, soup still warming on the stove, a calendar on the fridge with 3 dates circled in red. The kind of home that tells you everything about a woman without saying a word. She was trying. Every single day, she was trying. Damien knelt beside Elena without hesitation. Shallow breathing. Pale face. He checked her pulse. Pressed gently. Concussion, possibly more. She needed help immediately. He lifted her into his arms. She was light. Too light. The kind of light that comes from skipping meals so your daughter doesn't have to. Coat, he said gently to Sophie. She grabbed her jacket and followed him out without a word. In the SUV, at the second red light, Sophie spoke from the back seat where she sat beside her mother. You're not Ryan. No. Are you a doctor? No. She thought about that. Then softly, but you came anyway. He didn't answer. He looked in the rearview mirror. She was watching him, not with fear, with something far more powerful. Hope. He turned back to the road. She's going to be okay. You promise? I do. He didn't know why he said it. But in that moment, it was the only thing that felt true. At the ER, Damien didn't wait in line. He didn't fill out forms at a kiosk. He carried Elena straight through the entrance, past the protests of the night desk clerk, and directly to the trauma bay. I'm not leaving her in the hallway, he said simply. They didn't argue again. While doctors worked on stabilizing Elena, Damien sat in the waiting area with Sophie. She curled up on the bench beside him, jacket still zipped to her chin. He handed her a warm bottle of water. She held it without drinking. She works a lot, Sophie said quietly. He said nothing. He didn't need to. A nurse appeared half an hour later. Elena was stable. Concussion, dehydration, exhaustion, no internal bleeding. She'll wake up soon. You can go see her. Sophie looked up at Damien. Will you come too? He paused, then nodded. When Elena opened her eyes, she found herself staring at a stranger in the corner of her hospital room. A man she had never seen before, sitting quietly. Not a doctor, not anyone she recognized. She sat up too fast. The 4 tugged. Careful, he said. You lost a lot of blood. Who are you? A pause. I got a phone call from your daughter. You fell. I was the one who brought you here. Her lips parted. The memory came flooding back. The kitchen floor, her knees buckling, the cold tiles, then blackness. God, she whispered. I told her to call Ryan. He lives 2 floors down. She must have dialed the wrong number. He nodded once. She was scared, but she did exactly what she had to do. Elena looked down at the 4 line in her hand, her breathing still shaky, and then she said it, quietly, but clearly. Thank you. For coming. For helping her. For helping me. Something shifted in him, a slight loosening of the shoulders, as though a weight had been acknowledged rather than carried alone. You were bleeding, he said. I didn't think twice. I just drove. He paused. I know what it's like to wish someone would show up, and no one ever does. She didn't ask him what he meant. The way he said it, flat, precise, with nothing ornamental, told her it wasn't something he said often. A soft knock. Sophie peeked through the door, a stuffed bear under her arm, hair messy from sleep. When she saw her mother sitting upright, she ran in with both arms wide open. Mama, hey baby, I'm okay. I'm okay now. Sophie looked up at Damien and then back at her mother. He came fast, Mama, just like in the movies. His car was shiny and loud. Elena laughed, a real laugh. She looked at the man. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Damien, he said simply. Damien Ward. The name made her blink. She had heard it somewhere before. But before she could place it, a nurse stepped in with a clipboard. Discharge papers. Someone had already signed as responsible party. The hospital bill covered. I can't accept this, Elena said. You don't have to, Damien replied. Just take your daughter home. Sophie tilted her head. Is he your friend now, Mama? Elena looked at this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and said nothing judgmental, who had acted instead of asking, who had stayed without being asked to. He might be, she said softly. As the nurse helped her up, Elena turned once more. Thank you, not just for tonight, for staying. He nodded, then turned to leave. But just before he stepped out the door, he paused. Elena, the hospital you used to work at. St. Mary's. She blinked. Yes. What? No reason, he said. Just sounded familiar. And then he was gone. But the weight of his presence still lingered, like a door that hadn't quite closed, like a chapter that wasn't finished yet. That moment, my dear friends, is where the story deepens. And I promise you, it gets even more meaningful from here. But before I continue, if this story is already reaching into your chest and pulling at something tender, please go ahead and hit that like button right now. And if you're not already part of our family here, subscribe to this channel. Because every week we bring you stories just like this one. Stories that don't just entertain you. Stories that heal you, teach you, and remind you of what truly matters. Subscribe so you never miss a single one. Now, let's talk about what this story is really about. Because beneath the kind stranger, the little girl, and the wrong number, there is something deeply human happening here. And as someone who cares deeply about your emotional and psychological well-being, I want to walk you through it carefully. The first thing I want you to notice is Sophie, 7 years old, standing alone in that apartment with her mother bleeding on the kitchen floor. No screaming, no freezing, no spiraling into panic. She acted. She remembered the instruction, she reached for the phone, and she made the call. Now, what does psychology tell us about children who develop this kind of calm under crisis? It tells us they have usually been raised with a sense of safety through routine and instruction. Elena had told Sophie what to do if something went wrong. That one act of preparation, simple, quiet, probably took less than 5 minutes of conversation, became the thing that saved her life. For those of you who are mothers, grandmothers, or caregivers, let this sink in. You may not be able to protect your children from every hard moment, but you can prepare them. A calm voice, a clear instruction, a single sentence repeated over time. It becomes a lifeline. It becomes strength. Now let's talk about Elena. Elena is a woman many of you will recognize immediately. She is the woman who sacrifices before anyone even knows she's hungry. She works. She keeps the apartment neat. She circles dates on the calendar. She warms soup on the stove. She skips meals so her daughter has enough. And she does all of this quietly, without complaint, without announcement, because she believes that is what love looks like. And she is not wrong. But there is something the psychological community wants women like Elena to hear. Depletion is not devotion. When a woman runs herself down to the point of collapsing on a kitchen floor, that is not strength. That is a system that has been overloaded for too long with no recovery time, no one to lean on, no room for need. And the body eventually demands what the mind refuses to ask for. Many women over 50 know exactly this feeling. You spent decades pouring into children, partners, parents, employers, communities. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking whether anyone was pouring back into you. The body keeps score. Exhaustion, dehydration, stress-related fainting, chronic illness. These are not random. These are the body waving a flag that the mind has been ignoring for years. Elena's collapse was not a weakness. It was a message. And it took a 7-year-old girl and a wrong number for the world to finally respond. Now let's talk about Damien. Here is a man with everything. A penthouse, a city at his feet, power, resources, influence. And yet he is standing barefoot in the dark at some late hour, alone, holding a phone that wasn't supposed to ring for him. What does that tell you? It tells you that wealth and success are not the same thing as peace. It tells you that a man can build an empire and still feel entirely empty at the center of it. Damien's loneliness is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It is just quiet, barefoot, in the dark. And this is something that the psychology of wealth confirms again and again. The more external achievement a person accumulates without corresponding emotional fulfillment, the more hollow the success feels. Success without belonging is just a very expensive kind of loneliness. What happens to Damien when Sophie calls? Something wakes up in him. Not his CEO brain, not his strategic mind. Something older, something human. Someone needs me right now, and I can actually help. He doesn't calculate. He doesn't delegate. He drives. And this, my dear friends, is the psychology of purpose. Research consistently shows that the moments of deepest meaning in human life are not moments of achievement. They are moments of genuine connection, of showing up when it matters, of being the person someone needed. Damien had forgotten what that felt like. Sophie's wrong number reminded him. Now I want to talk about trust, because trust is the quiet backbone of this entire story. Elena opens the door to a stranger. She lets him carry her daughter out into his car. She allows him into her hospital room. And eventually, she hands him a brown envelope taped shut that she had hidden for years. Why? Why does she trust him? Because he showed up without an agenda. Trust, especially for women who have been let down by systems, institutions, employers, and sometimes the very people who were supposed to protect them, doesn't come from words. It doesn't come from titles or money or promises. It comes from consistent, quiet action. Damien didn't ask for gratitude. He didn't explain himself. He just did the next right thing, and then the one after that. And Elena, who had been trained by loss to watch carefully, read that clearly. For those of you who have trouble trusting people after being burned, I want you to hear this. Your caution is not a flaw. It is wisdom built from experience. Trust is not given. It is observed. It is earned through pattern, not promise. You are allowed to watch. You are allowed to wait. And you are allowed to extend trust slowly on your own terms. The deeper story here is about a woman who built a wall around herself not out of coldness, but out of survival. And someone who was patient enough, consistent enough, and decent enough to be worth letting in. Now let's talk about something that a lot of women in their 50s and beyond carry very quietly. The experience of speaking up about something wrong, being ignored, discredited, and then pushed out. Elena did everything right. She documented. She reported. She filed. She kept records. She circled the right names and dates. And what did the system do? It accused her of falsifying records. It shut her out. It silenced her with the very bureaucracy that was supposed to protect patients. This experience, speaking up and being punished for it, is one of the most psychologically damaging things that can happen to a person who is morally grounded. Because it attacks not just your career, but your sense of reality. You start to question yourself. Did I do something wrong? Was I too aggressive? Did I misread the situation? You didn't. You were right. And the system was corrupt. What happens to people after this kind of experience is often called moral injury. It is different from burnout. It is different from trauma. It is the specific pain of having your values violated by the very institution you believed in. Nurses, teachers, caregivers, social workers across America carry this wound quietly. They gave everything to a system that didn't deserve it, and they are still paying the price. If you have lived something like Elena's experience, I want you to hear this clearly. You were not wrong to speak. The problem was never your voice. The problem was the silence of the people around you who should have listened. And that little forged signature with her name on it, that is what systems do to people who see too much. They don't just silence you. They use your name to do the thing they know you never would. But here is what I want you to hold on to. That envelope existed. Elena kept it. For years, in a drawer behind Sophie's coloring books, she kept the truth. She did not let them convince her that she had imagined it. She did not burn it. She held it. And when the right person finally came along, she handed it over without hesitation. Keeping your truth is an act of extraordinary psychological strength. Even when no one believes you, even when the world has moved on, even when you are tired, you hold the record, you hold the memory, because the truth does not expire. Now let's spend some time on what this story is inviting each one of you to do differently in your own life. The first thing I want to speak to is this. Most of us, especially women who were raised to be quiet, to be agreeable, to make peace at any cost, have been trained to shrink when something feels wrong, to doubt our instincts, to wonder if we're being too sensitive. Elena doubted herself for years. She asked herself 100 times whether she had misread the situation. She had not. Her instincts were correct from the very first moment. Your instincts are almost always correct. Psychological research on intuition tells us that what we call a gut feeling is actually the brain processing a massive amount of observed data below the level of conscious thought. That unease you feel around a certain person, that quiet voice that says something isn't right, that moment when something feels off even though you can't explain why. Listen to it. Do not argue yourself out of it to seem polite or cooperative. Your nervous system is often ahead of your logic. The second thing I want to speak to is the psychology of asking for help. Sophie called for help. She was 7 years old, and she picked up a phone and she said the words, "I need help. My mom fell. Please come." Those 5 words changed everything. Many of you were raised in a generation that equated asking for help with weakness. That taught you to handle things yourself. That made you feel ashamed when you needed someone. Gentle, I want to gently challenge that belief today. Asking for help is not weakness. Asking for help is accurate self-knowledge. It is the recognition that you are a human being in a situation that exceeds what one person can manage alone. It is the most honest thing you can say. Pause. And here is the thing about the women I speak to most. The ones who never ask for help are not stronger. They are lonelier. They are carrying weights no one sees. And they often end up exactly where Elena did, collapsed on a kitchen floor, finally forced to receive what they should have been allowed to ask for long ago. You are allowed to say, "I need help." You are allowed to say, "I can't do this alone." You are allowed to reach out. Reassuring. And if you reach the wrong number, as Sophie did, that is not a failure. That can be the very accident that changes everything. The third thing I want to address is for the women among you who have loved deeply, served faithfully, and still ended up alone. Who look at a story like this and feel something ache because you wonder if anyone would come for you if you fell. I want you to know something. Damian Ward is not a fantasy. He is a symbol. He represents what is possible when one human being refuses to let another one fall through the cracks. And while I am not promising you a billionaire at your door, I am telling you this. When you have healed enough to let people in, they do come. When you stop performing in vulnerability, connection becomes possible. When you allow yourself to be seen, something in the universe tends to send exactly what you need. But you have to open the door. Elena opened the door. Not just literally when Damien knocked. She opened it emotionally. She told him the truth about Connor. She handed him the envelope. She said yes even when it terrified her. She stirred the soup and handed him a spoon. That is courage, not the loud kind. The quiet, ordinary, everyday kind that most people never talk about. The courage to let someone in after they've hurt you. The courage to try again after the system failed you. The courage to believe that not everyone who comes to your door has come to take something from you. Now, what do I want to leave you with today? I want you to think about the forged signature on that document. Your name used without your permission. Your identity weaponized against you. Some of you know exactly what I am talking about. It doesn't have to be a literal signature. It can be your reputation being used against you in a divorce. Your words taken out of context by someone at work. Your love twisted into something unrecognizable by someone who claimed to care for you. The response to that is not rage, not bitterness, not collapse. The response is what Elena did. She dried her hands. She steadied herself. And she said, "Let me be the one to send it." She reclaimed her own story. She became the one who ended the chapter instead of waiting for someone else to end it for her. That is empowerment. That is the kind of psychological strength that no system can take from you once you have found it. And here is my final word to you today. You may be sitting somewhere in America right now. Maybe it's a Tuesday afternoon and the house is quiet. Maybe you are wondering if the best years are behind you. Maybe you are carrying something you've been carrying for a very long time alone. Maybe you are Elena, tired and collapsed on the floor, and you haven't told anyone yet. I want to tell you that Sophie exists inside you. That small, quiet, determined part of you that knows exactly what to do in a crisis. That part that doesn't panic. That reaches for the phone and makes the call even when her hands are cold. And the right number is whatever truth you've been protecting in that drawer behind the coloring books. The time to take it out is now. Not to burn it, not to bury it deeper, but to hand it to someone who has proven, through quiet, consistent action, that they deserve it. And if you can't find that person yet, I want to remind you that this channel exists for exactly that reason. Every week, we sit together in this space. You bring your story and your experience and your decades of wisdom, and together we make sense of what life has handed us. Not to complain, not to wound each other, but to heal, to grow, to go back out into our lives a little stronger than we were when we sat down. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for trusting me with your ears and your heart. If this touched you, share it with a woman in your life who needs to hear it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. Because next week, I have another story waiting for you. And you will not want to miss it.